Oh, you want me to
I
push
ate
the
all
other
the
button
buttons.
too? God, that's
Push
a lot
the
of
button.
buttons.
There are no buttons because I ate all the buttons, and now I work at the button factory.
The way Bliss is saying it, all I can think of is when you enter the cheat code in Super Meat Boy for like the secret characters, and Edmund's just like, "Push the buttons!"
Push the keys, for God's sakes! Yes.
I was thinking Rush Hour, but okay.
Alright. I'll go announce it on my Discord, and then I'll push the magic button.
Push the button! I push the button. No, you push the button. I push the button.
He pushed the button.
Anyone who got that reference gets a cookie.
But I'm on a diet. Are you telling me to cheat my diet?
Yes, because I work at the cookie factory.
Joey's a monster. Joey is a monster. He made me make a cookie cake vector.
He's a cookie monster.
Jamie, I'm losing power. I need the cookies, Jamie. Rally in your father, Jamie.
Who the hell is Jamie?
Seriously, you don't know that reference?
Jamie, I'm going to eat you, Jamie.
This is how the cookie crumbles.
The intro now.
Okay. Oh yeah, I should probably do a push to talk.
Alright, live. It's too late. The whole system's gonna crash.
Oh no! No! I fix it.
Could it be boop to talk?
Okay. So, hi everyone. I don't know if I've been traumatized or hugged, or both. We had to watch Master Code's favorite episode this week, because it was his turn. You can imagine how that went for all of us. Blissy, here's more tissues. It was the perfect pair. And now, we're going to start with, Golden, is it your turn to go first this week?
Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, I'm Golden Fox. I review... Oh, by the way, you need to update the text, Fiaura. It still says Luna Eclipsed.
What?
On the lower right of the screen.
Oh. Yeah, new widget.
Yeah.
Need to fix new widget.
We had a little happy accident. So yeah, I'm Golden Fox. I review MLP episodes, movie reviews. I run, I stream Let's Plays on Thursdays and Fridays on my Twitch channel. Insane Spiral, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to you.
I'm Insane Spyro, the greatest dragon in gaming, reviewer, let's player, video game pundit, and the artist of this fine rabble, and I will let Jasper go. I almost forgot my alphabet then. I was going to say Lightning Bliss.
Hello, I am Jasper Pie of Pie's Pizzeria, who bears cook pie, then pie. I do comics, audio editing, and freaking out about stuff. But today, I might not scream as much. Instead, I will Shatner it up with ever I get emotional.
I can't believe I love this song. I just got to sing along, 'cause I'm Lightning Bliss, the rainbow cool, and I gotta sing along. Bye.
Alright,
I don't get it.
Master Code.
Anyway, this is your super awesome ace analyst, Master Code, the wonder of used ponies, everything from the show to the comics to the books and everything in between. Moon Knight.
Hello, I'm Moon Knight. I do I do covers. I review My Little Pony episodes, and I'm here to watch this episode. Everybody was crying in just a while ago, but yeah, it's we're just here, so I'll just pass it to show you.
Hey there, everybody. It's Shoujo. I'm gonna forewarn you guys. I'm sick. I horked down a sub to get here in time, so I may throw up during this podcast. But hopefully, reviewing this episode may make me better.
Mm.
Well, we've already had British Ninja throw up on a live stream, so you're good.
Brother Critic.
Someone gave here.
Kidding me?
Someone gave him the Sakura potion or something because he went back into a little cult.
Yeah, sorry guys. I am the Brony Critic. I review fandom content, fan materials. You guys can check me out on YouTube and on Twitter. And yeah, we're watching this episode. I'm gonna move on to Master Code because I mean,
Master Code
God.
is gone. It's
The Fiaura, actually.
no first
Hi.
review. Oh right.
so. Hi everyone. This is what I have to say. I'm Fiaura. I'm your host. I just did that just to make Lightning Bliss go. I hate you.
We love you too, Blissy.
All are evil. You hate me. You just admit it.
Blissy,
I
it's okay.
did.
It's okay because I listen to that song every morning as a part of my music wake up, and I cry every time. So I'm a giant crybaby too.
I
Alright,
did
Master
not
Code,
this
your episode. Go ahead.
Alrighty, so as I said, this is my favorite episode. The perfect feels, because it makes you feel all the feels. It was funny because my previous favorite episode, it was almost a tie, but I went with Perfect Pair. My other one, for the longest time, was actually Mending Fences, but overall, this one was much more emotionally powerful. So, anyway, geez, where to start with this one? This is the episode fans have been clamoring for forever. To learn something about Applejack's parents. Anything. And now we got an entire episode dedicated to them. I love the dialogue between them. It feels organic. It's cute. It's funny. It's emotional. I love the continuity nods. All 100 of them, like Nightmare Moon on the moon, or Mayor's Pink Mane, and just numerous others. Let's see. Let me look through my notes. Let's see. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Of course, the song "You're in My Head" like a catchy song is probably top 5, top 3 of my favorite songs. What I like about this episode was, even though there were some humorous moments, for the most part, they actually played it pretty straightforward. Like the perfect example is the whole wedding scene, where in most kids shows, they play it safe and have the guy who's against everything that's going on. It's like, oh, what was I thinking? I care more about family. No, they actually played it straight. Like grandparent, he walked out, he left, and I was like, wow, to put something, even for that in a kid show, that's pretty powerful. Another one of my favorite scenes is when they talk to Burnt Oak. The part that got me was the part where after the story's over, about when Bright Mac and him were called, just messing around and whatnot. The part that really got me was the part where after everyone leaves, Big Mac, he comes back and he's like, can I come back and listen to some stories? And Burnt Oak's like, I'd like that. That was such a powerful, sad scene, because it reminded me of actually the scene from Field of Dreams, where at the end where he has to play catch with his dad. He's like, Dad, you want to have a catch? I'd like that. It's so reminded me of me. I can almost guarantee they channeled that scene. I would be shocked if they didn't. I also like how they had kind of influence in Ponyville, like how Pear Butter was actually helped Chiffon Swirl to become a chef, and thus we have Mrs. Cake, and all the interactions from learning one story to the next, again, felt very organic. Only certain friends would know certain parts of the story, and we get to learn more about not just those characters that we interact with, but learn about the past as well. Let's see. God, what else do I have in my notes? Yep. All right. I actually thought it was also very powerful at the end where they all reconciled. That was really good. But the part that really struck me, again, for a kid's show, was the fact that, and it's understandable, but Granny Smith didn't tell Grandpa about the kids, that they had kids. So again, I was like, wow, that is amazing. Again, to put something like that in a kid's show. But again, it's understandable. He left, left in a huff, so again, I really don't have any real problems that I could really think of. So perfect pair, perfect episode. On to you, Golden.
Was your voice cracking?
Golden, you heard why Master Code loves this episode. I know we all like this episode, but just remember, don't be afraid to tear it apart.
I am very happy that this episode happened. I'm already working on a script and reviewing this episode, and I don't want to risk repeating myself. I will say that I agree with a lot of what Mastercode says. There's at least two things that I do want to bring up that makes this episode even more powerful. One of which is that in Grandpa's situation, where he abandoned his own daughter because of his own anger and his competitive nature with Granny Smith getting to his head so hard, illustrates to at least to what adults can take from it, is that it's important to never leave your child. Even in some situations, you have to learn to compromise and stop being so angry or being so stuck up in something, because it can, not only does it hurt you, but it also hurts those around you. It hurt Pear Butter. It hurt Granny Smith. There was a reason why she didn't want to speak up about that. Because abandoning your own kid, even for something like that, as what Grandpa illustrated, it will haunt you for the rest of your life, because that was the last time he ever saw her. And I think that is a very important role model. I'm not saying it's a great role model, but it's definitely something that teaches viewers about the values of what your familyhood is and what it's there for. The second of which is that after all of this commotion, it also proves how Applejack and the family remains very powerful for a family, because they still stick together as a family without their parents. And I think that's something that can relate very much to those who grew up without having to know their parents, whether it be them dying when they were babies, or that they were adopted, or that there was something that happened that they didn't have the chance to get to know about. And I think that's something very heavy to take into consideration. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Insane Spyro.
Okay, give me a second. I'm just using my paintbrush to draw a bunker here. And then I'll also put this in the chat. Oh, what have I done? Hold on. And I'm sure you all know what that symbol is. Okay, are we all good now? Good. So, I didn't like it. At all.
To the dungeon!
Let me tell you something about British culture. Shakespeare, being English, means that in school we had to do a lot of Shakespeare. And Romeo and Juliet is one of those topics. And we had to compare 3 different versions. The original script by Shakespeare, which is 3 hours long. A modernized version of the events, which is like a gangster version with 2 warring mafia families. And an animated version, which was The Lion King 2. We had to write a 1,000-word essay on each of the 3 and then a fourth essay to say which of the three worked the best and why. Romeo and Juliet has been drilled into my head, and it is now, unless you have something truly original, unique, amazing to bring to the table, it's just boring. It's the most overdone, overplayed cliche of two lovers from warring families and that their forbidden love prevails in the end. Now, there are great moments in this episode, like the fun part with the old lady with the cats, the songs, and all the little extra bits like Saffron Swirl. But the actual main part of the story, like the overall Romeo and Juliet bit, it just didn't interest me. And the final bit at the end where the guy's like, "Oh, I am making you choose," it's like, why? That's just being a dick for being a dick's sake. Like, you clearly can see that rather than fighting with this other family, you can clearly see that this would make both families end this stupid feud. But for the sake of the Romeo and Juliet script, just because it happened in Romeo and Juliet, we have to make sure that he leaves. Even though the feud was going to be ended, you just wanted to follow the Romeo and Juliet script. So, yeah, I'm not a fan.
Well, ouch.
I
Anything
believe
else you
there's
want
a
to put on
lesson
there?
Not really. I mean, as I say, there are some very nice bits. The song is very nice, but the overall motif of Romeo and Juliet, it feels forced. I know that it's a lot of your favourite episodes and there are moments that make you cry, but again, being British, I have seen Romeo and Juliet done to death in so many iterations because of British studies. And that bit at the end where it's like, I'm forcing you to choose, it was in the original screenplay or theatre play, and it's just like, it was one of these moments where it's like the writers weren't writing out of their own creativity, they were writing because that's what happened in Romeo and Juliet. The two families were forced to make this choice, which ended up in the death of their children.
Okay, you and I are going to have a fight later, but in the meantime, Jasper.
First of all, going off of what Inverge said, I believe there's a lesson to learn in all this. School people should not... Teachers should not make school peoples have to read Romeo and Juliet.
Tell that to some teachers here too, please.
I will. I will say it. But in the meantime, I will say this was... Wow, this was a really heavy episode. Like, of course, there's the usual cartoony background shtick and just how the characters go up, how Pear Butter and Bright Mac go off of each other is just adorable. But it all overall felt like a really ill episode, and I loved how they didn't even outright said, "Oh, they did," but it's heavily implied. It's like, we know it, they know it, vegetable lasagna knows it, and overall, it was just a really touching love story. And I can't find anything to truly nitpick about it. I believe there was an unsung hero to this love story, and that unsung hero is the building zone. The builders who decided it was okay to zone two farms directly next to each other.
That's actually a good point, because Ponyville has a lot of field around. Why did they decide to build each other next to it?
Exactly, but think of it this way. If someone at the building zone permits office didn't screw the pooch, we wouldn't have gotten one of the best love stories in Ponyville. Coincidence? I think not! Overanalyzation? Perhaps.
Also, wait. Buildings. What happened to the Pear family house then?
Guess now that grandpa's back in town, he just decided, I'm gonna open the farm again and see if I can touch and fix up this untouched land.
Go, Blissey, go.
Oh, it's my turn. Well, I could totally rip up Insane Spiral right now.
I mean, that's what we're
Pussy,
here for.
pussy, trust me,
To,
trust me. I got this. Go ahead and say your thing, but I got this.
I'm just gonna say nobody died in this story, and the two families were not gangsters. Anyway,
the kids died. Like, it's implied that the kids died.
yeah, but not kill. They didn't kill each themselves though. So
You don't know
your
that.
point is invalid. Anyway, so I really have nothing to complain about. I can't really, nothing off the top of my head. I mean, there were some oddball moments, like when they were babies, they could talk to each other and they sounded like adults, which I thought was weird. But, and then everybody's like, well, think of it like the Rugrats. I'm like, okay, all right. But other than that, no, just about everything in this episode I loved. This episode made me cry 3 or 4 times, and everyone can vouch for this. It hits home for me on an account that, like, I love my dad. I miss him very much. Rest in peace. He passed away in 2010 from a massive heart attack. I'm blessed to say I have, like, 2 dads now. My stepfather, who treats me like his own daughter, and my father-in-law, who lives in Germany, doesn't speak a word of English, loves me like his own. Love it. But what tugs at the heartstrings for me is, the whole situation where the father is so blinded by anger that he was willing to abandon his own daughter. It tugs at the heartstrings because there was a time, I mean, forgive me, I am going to get a little personal here. There was a time where, after my parents divorced, my mom and my dad were not getting along very well, and they would have petty disputes. I only asked them not to drag me into it. Well, my dad made that mistake and dragged me into it. It was over something really petty between my little sister and my mom, and he basically demanded that I give her my cell phone because my little sister was grounded. She wasn't allowed to talk to anybody, and he called me and demanded me to give her my cell phone or he would call the cops, and there was no call for that. There was no reason for it. Nothing was going on. It was just flat out embarrassing and a threat. So I told my dad, fine, I'm going to give her my damn cell phone. Oh, pardon my language. Darn cell phone. Sorry, this is a personal matter. And she could talk to you as much as she wants. But after this, you're not hearing from me again. I'm not going to drop her off at your place anymore. I'm not going to drop my little brother off at your place anymore. I don't care if you're paying for my school or my gas or whatever. I'll find a way. But I'm not talking to you anymore. You dragged me in for the first and final time. And then I threw my phone at my sister and slammed the door. I didn't talk to my father for 3 months after this. And during that time was when my boyfriend was visiting, who happens to be my husband now. We had a lovely time. He spent about, I think it was 1 month with me before we knew, oh yeah, he could stay for 3 months. And in that entire time, I've told him about my dad. I told him about our bad blood, and that I did not want him to meet him. So my boyfriend, now husband, came and left, had to go back to Germany, and oh gosh, I really need to speed this up. Okay. I contact my father and say, hey, let's talk. And he said, okay. We go to a restaurant together, we sit, and it's awkward silence for a few minutes, and then he finally says, so the boyfriend leave? I'm like, yep. And that's when he knew he screwed up, because I cut him out of my life that much that I wasn't willing to let him meet my future husband by that point. And then he asked me about school, and I said school was going good. I'm keeping my grades up. And after the fact, about a few minutes of silence, he said, I'm proud of you. I know I may not say that enough, but I'm proud of you. And I love you. And that brought me to tears, and I told him I love you too. You could just be a bit of a stubborn jerk sometimes. He's like, yeah, I know. And we made up. Now, here's the kicker, and sorry, this is going to be hurtful, but not more than a few months later, he died.
I'm a hug the blissy.
Yeah. My point in all this with this episode and why it tugs at the heartstrings, don't think twice before you up and abandon your family member. You might regret it.
Okay, now I'm for real hugging the blissy.
Thank you for sharing, Blessing. I mean, I hate to make you follow that up, Moon Knight, but you gotta follow that one up, man.
Oh crap!
No, it's very interesting now that you touch on it. Like it's how should I put it? It's like I get why some of you might like really love some episodes because of personal reasons. Like it has happened with me with some movies, and it's somewhat the same stuff with another movie that well, some people don't like, but I do love it because of, well, some personal issues. But this episode was, I think, it was really really good on the feels. Especially a song, like it's one of the most beautiful songs that they've ever done in the My Little Pony show. It's a real shame that after this they couldn't do any other like a good love episode. I don't know that why they didn't follow like not the Shakespearean side, but maybe just like make a little bit more common sense and not just well, you know, the Pinky and Mud episode. But the only critiques I have for this episode is, well, first of all, yeah, the father was kind of. I mean, I get why they were like rivalries because they're like basically companies that are trying to compete with each other and they can't really associate with each other because they're selling different stuff and all that. Well, it's like you're seeing it with your own eyes that they're together, that they love each other, that they don't want to be apart from everyone, and it wasn't really that really hard to say, oh yeah, you can stay in our house. We'll go to Vancouver. You can stay in our house. You can stay here and keep up the pair, you know, the pair stand and everything. And another thing, there was another thing that I don't remember. I think it was just basically the family feud stuff. Like the babies thing, I kind of get it because it's like with Rugrats or something. Like babies understand each other, not necessarily adults to babies. But yeah, I guess just the family feud was kind of, and while while some people like Master Codes, while you think that it may imply that Granny Smith didn't talk about him about well, the kids and everything, I think it's a little bit more about, well, them parting away because I'm guessing that Grandpa Pear didn't even knew they were dead or anything after he came back to Ponyville and everything, and that's why he's crying and all of that at the end. But yeah, I like this episode, but yeah, it has some nitpicks here and there that I didn't like. Up to Shoujo.
Okay. Shoujo! Let's go.
I'm about to drop something heavy on you guys. After hearing everyone say stuff about this, it kind of made me rethink a few things about this episode, and the reason why it hits hard to me the most is because I've basically been living that my entire life. My dad, he can be the most stubborn, arrogant, self-righteous jerk out there. He's so full of himself. He thinks he always knows the way. He thinks it's either his way or the highway, and he's just so stubborn. So I can understand where Pear Butter is standing when she confronts her dad about everything else that happens and how she feels sad because he's her family, and it's hard to go against her, but she just had to do it. And I haven't worked up the guts to tell my dad all the problems that I have with him because I just fear for my life that I say something wrong and I just go boop. And I don't want this to... He's a good guy, but his intentions can be all over the place, and he can send me mixed messages all the time, and it just gets really frustrating at times. If I had to pick one thing I didn't like about this episode is what you guys were talking about with the Bright Mac and Pear Butter understanding each other as kids, because we clearly see the younger Cakes not being able to talk in full sentences, and that just kind of confused me for a little bit. That's all I'm going to say. Brony Critic, off to you.
Well, damn. So, with me, what really caught my eye with this episode is it could have gone bad really easily. Like, this kind of episode, they could have very easily gone, made it feel cheap, made it feel manipulative, made it feel just do the things that they felt were necessary to get some tears or reactions. But rather, this episode earns every emotional bit that it tries to get, and it earns it because we have spent, at this point in the show's history, I think about 8 years with these characters. So, we've known all of them for a long time, and the pacing, the relationships, we've wanted to know a lot about the Apple family since the beginning, but they've waited until now because now we understand who Big Mac is. We understand who Apple Bloom is. We had to wait for Apple Bloom to actually mature and grow up into the pony she needed to be, which meant we had to wait for her to get her cutie mark. But we also needed to learn more about Applejack. And so now that they're all effectively adults, we can now learn this aspect of them and learn this missing part. And the way they express the relationship between their parents is handled beautifully. We learn about their parents, not necessarily because of anything the parents do, but because of how they relate to their children. And thus we can infer other things about them. We can infer about their character. And that makes us love them even more. We feel just as much of a connection with these characters as the characters in the show. And, my favorite scene was Burnt Oak, the scene that they mentioned, or that Master Code was talking about earlier with Burnt Oak and Big Mac. That scene is beautiful, and it's beautiful because it's simple, because it doesn't need to explain why that is so, why that scene is so sad, why it means so much, because we as an audience have followed these characters up to that point. And while I will admit that it being a Romeo and Juliet story is definitely, it could have been a deal breaker. It's the fact that it is so good. It is such a great adaptation of that story beat. But it makes some major changes. It makes some major element shifts, which are very realistic for, unfortunately, how the real world works. In any other story, if this had been a lesser story, then Grandparent definitely would have, come around and turned out to be a good friend and been around. But that's not how the real world works sometimes. And I really applaud this episode for taking the high road and making not easy decisions with this story. I wish other episodes that handled similar topics were just as brave as this episode. And it's actually, this episode kind of makes a lot of the other episodes, not only in this season, but following it, kind of worse in comparison, because this shows that they absolutely could deal with this kind of emotional depth. And it kind of makes you wish that they'd done it more often, that they could be this brave in other episodes. But that's about the only nitpick I really have, is that it makes the other episodes, it makes me long for them to be as brave as this episode was willing to be.
Fire nose beast.
Yeah.
On to Fee.
Okay. So I promised Blissey I had this. So yes. There is the fact that this is a Romeo and Juliet star-crossed lover style story. But here's the difference. I'm gonna be honest, Shakespeare's story in the modern context just sucks.
It sucks in the old context as well, trust me.
Except for the Leo DiCaprio.
However, the fact is that there is a way to tell such a story and make it good, great, or perfect. It's okay to use other material to tell a story, so long as you add to it, modify it to fit what you're doing, and you tell it better than the original. So yes, Spyro, this has been done to death, but they did a better job than the version you read in school.
I've read the book, I watched the Leonardo DiCaprio screenplay, I saw the modernized Mafia-style one, and then the Lion King 2 for the animated one. There's many different versions. And I just felt like some of it, like the whole song, that's obviously new, that was great, that was fantastic. The bit that Master Code and Brony have brung up, Big Mac talking to the guy and saying, "Can I come back?" That was a natural moment. That moment felt powerful. But the one where he just up and leaves, I know that's directly from the original transcript, and it's like it wasn't even a second thought. It was just like, yep, gone. And it's like you didn't even stand there for 1 second and think, maybe I shouldn't. You could have still had him leave, but it was just the fact that it was word for word, yes, just like, no, I hate you, I'm gone. And as I say, the song, the bit with Big Mac, those were great moments. Those were the moments that held more weight to me. That fan song that you linked with Apple Bloom, that's more emotional because it was natural rather than from the script.
Hold on a second. I was quiet and let you speak. That much said, I do agree that they had to make some decisions to keep it closer to the original in order to keep their own continuity. They couldn't just plop another farm that nobody had mentioned for 7 seasons next to the apple farm, no questions asked. When in fact that area that they show, that farm's been replaced with more apples.
That's what I was saying, like, there's no building, there's no anything, there's no fences, nobody remembers them, nobody has ever told about.
What likely happened was they moved out, nobody moved into the farm, Granny Smith bought it, and they expanded their own farm. The point here being that they had to figure out a way to introduce this concept of another family called the Pears in order to create the love story they wanted to create. So parts of the Romeo and Juliet thing had to be kept. There was no way around it. However, telling it the way they did made it wonderful. And while, yes, we've heard this song and dance a dozen times, retelling the same song and dance does not necessarily make it terrible. It just means that you have to tell it in a way that changes it or adapts it for your setting, and then you have to tell it better than the last time it was told, which to all of us, the last time it was told that we're going to reference is Shakespeare. So, as far as I'm concerned, they did a better job than Shakespeare. If anything, they made him look bad. Because you can because everything doesn't have to be a tragedy or a comedy. You can have a happy ending and still have your tragedy later.
I think it's not about the tragedy or anything. It's more about, like, if it is that exact same line and they were just putting it there just for the sake of it, then again, they're not doing a better job. They're just copying one part that didn't have to go there. Like, they could have rewritten that part if they were going to try to do a better job, which, yeah, kind of happens in The Lion King 2. So, yeah, I think they could have done a little bit better job, but
and then there's things like the marriage is done, Granny Smith complains, and Pear Butter takes a step out. And Granny Smith doesn't, like, this has just been pointed out as well by Myth Pony, Granny Smith doesn't hesitate. She doesn't, like, think for a second on it. She just walks up and starts comforting her, and presumably she was so well integrated into the family, no one ever felt the need to bring up her dad ever.
that's what I'm saying. Like, if you compare it to the other things, like, they change it in that way. Like, nobody has. Well, these two don't have to die. Maybe someone else died in The Lion King 2, but it's like one of the families accepts the other one, and that's a really good move. But if you're still going to make the other one like a dick, because I think even at The Lion King 2, like, I think Kiara tried to save Sira at the end, but, well, she couldn't because Sira was kind of still at it, and I think the current was still powerful. I don't remember really that much, but the thing is, they could have changed William Shatner's part.
They could have, but why did they need to?
To be better, because it didn't need, like, that line in there didn't really fit. If you're seeing that even your own enemy is accepting your daughter into her family, why keep the food? Why keep fighting?
Because from a feuding standpoint, remember, Silver Quill and I actually had to go through this a lot about how revenge works. Revenge is always an escalating scale until one side forgives the other one. You can never be even. There's no, in a human mind, it's like, oh, I'm going to get even. No, you're not. You're always going to do more damage, and then you're going to feel like you got even, and then that just keeps escalating the feud. So from Grandpa's perspective, they just stole his daughter.
No, but they didn't, and here's the other problem, which is the same in the original script. What was the feud about? It's been going on for potentially, I'm going to say hundreds, let's be nice here.
And
it's been going on for hundreds of years. Nobody ever remembered what it was about. Nobody could even think about what happened. It's just like, I hate you because I have been raised to hate you. And you don't even know why you hate them, Mr. Grandpa. It's fun.
And the same thing goes with every famous feud. You don't know why. You don't know why it started. No one does. But because of the way revenge works in the human mind in a psychological standpoint, you always have to escalate. You always have to do more damage than you take in order to feel like you've gotten even. Hence the Hatfields and McCoy legend, where we don't actually know how the feud started. There's 16 different versions of how the feud started.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead.
You're forgetting that apples and pears are selling their products. They're trying to upstage each other because it's a competitive nature. It's a financial thing. It happens everywhere, whether it's McDonald's and Burger King or Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. That was pretty clear.
Yeah, but they're not trying to seek each other and stab each other in the back.
You don't have to do it that way. And if I took Grandpa's perspective, my biggest business competitor, who I can't even stay in the same room with for 5 minutes, her son just married my daughter, and my daughter just said she's with them now as much as me. They just stole my daughter. I can either stay here and fight or I can run, because obviously they can steal my family members now too, as well as my business. From his perspective, the feud had escalated to that point, and he had two options, and he took running away as opposed to standing and fighting.
Well,
No,
and another key element of this episode is that it doesn't start as them trying to learn about their parents. They're just trying to learn about the source of the feud. But the whole point of the episode is that there is no point. There is no point to feuds. And that's the whole point behind, Romeo and Juliet as well. The reason for the feud is inconsequential. The pain, the misery that it inflicts on people is the point. People who focus on why the feud started are looking for vindication and justification for the unjustifiable. That's the whole point of the episode. Thou art all punished.
Yes,
no, but it then comes back to the ending where I'll play from you being Grandpa Fiaura. Like, you're right. The reason is pointless, and you're saying that there was only the two options: he stands and fights, or he runs. Because in his eyes, he's in this room that he can't stand to be in this other person for 5 minutes. The problem is he doesn't know why he can't stand to be in the room with this woman. For him, it's blind hatred. He just hates her for the sake of hating.
That's how blind hatred works.
And after...
No.
That's true, but after the marriage, after he sees his daughter is now with them, and he's basically lost, what's the point in fighting? It's been so long, and it's clear at this point the next generation, the new generation, doesn't care about this feud. It's over. It's done. There's no reason to keep fighting.
It's not over to him.
It wasn't over to Granny Smith either.
And it wasn't over to Granny Smith either. And because she's still, like, the beginning of the episode, you saw how they reacted when they mentioned pears. So,
yeah, but after the marriage,
unreasonable
like,
blind hate drives us to do hundreds of things that just don't make any goddamn sense. A movie from the early, Blissy, you said it, I did it too, and I apologize. The movie from early 2000s called Kingdom of Heaven. The guy has no idea why he's being told to go hate the Muslims. By the end of the movie, he and the Muslim commander kind of have a respect and understanding and friendship between each other. The nobles are still telling them to have blind hatred for each other. But he defies that. And yet, even at the end of the movie, we see Richard the Lionheart's crusade coming up. And he comes to find the last person who held Jerusalem. The fact of the matter is, blind hatred is a huge motivation for any human being. So, you don't have to know why you hate something, you just hate it. And there's very little that can be done to reconcile it at any quickness. It can take months or years or generations to reconcile what would be considered blind hatred, where you hate someone but you don't know why.
And one of the elements that's so common in narrative, like when people have issues with, well, why didn't they just do that? Like the rational, the make sense option. Humans, and by extension, any of the characters that we personify, aren't rational actors. So we're going to run into these conflicting elements. Yeah, it makes no sense that Grandpere wouldn't, why is he deciding to circle the wagons right now? There's no point. It's because he's not rational. It's because the entire episode is about how emotional he is. He isn't a rational person until the end, when he has finally been punished and we realize exactly how much he's lost.
I mean, I can see that, but at the same time, I'll break the fourth wall. You said yourself, as a writer, you're there to make the script better, and that ending was just like copying the script word for word. Like, oh, I'm not going to give it a second thought. I'm not going to go up to my daughter and say, listen, I understand, but I still don't like it. If this is your final decision, it's yours, but you won't see me again. I am leaving. There was no extra lines. There was no anything extra. It was word for word, no, I hate you, I'm gone. And then years later, the kid's dead, and the Granny Smith's like, oh yeah, I should have told you that your daughter died. And, like, even that bit there, it's like, you didn't... His daughter, it doesn't matter how much of a bad person you might have thought he was, his daughter died, and you couldn't even send him a letter to say, oh yeah, by the way, Pear Jam just popped her clogs. And it's like, that seems very spiteful, and again, indicative of the original script. And as a writer, you could have written that ending so much better.
No, you don't, because, in my opinion, I've never, and I have a master's in human communication. I've had to read hundreds of stories of real people. There's never a moment where someone stops and does that when they're in blind hatred. It just doesn't happen.
I have an excellent example of this too, but go ahead.
They either escalate the hatred, or they move away. I mean, even myself, I'm at the point with my family where my biological family, where I have no respect for any of them that are still alive, to the point of which I don't talk to them. They've called me on the phone a couple times for the holidays, and I don't even answer the phone. And anytime I hear them on voicemail, I delete it without listening to what they have to say. If my biological father called tomorrow and said he was dying, my only response would be, good, the world's better off without you. And I know that's cold and terrible, but at the same time, I don't fully really remember why I hate the other members of that particular family who are still alive.
Then, well, that now just brings me back to the point, why are you still fighting it? Like, why don't you listen to that voicemail and just see
you
what
don't know her backstory, dude. You don't know what that man did to her.
Who's gone that far out of my way to make my life miserable, and anyone who's put me on who has physically stopped my heart in a hospital deserves my contempt. And
you have to understand.
So, whatever, there's huge parts of this feud we haven't seen. They've been having it since they were teenagers, and now they're 30-somethings with kids who are 18, and they're still pissed at each other. That's 15, 20 years of hate that's not going to be undone in the moment in like 30 seconds. It's just not going to happen.
There are times in life, and blessed if you've never experienced it. I've never experienced what Fiaura went through, good God, and I'm not about to touch it. It's not my business. I've experienced times in my family where I have disowned members and then cut them out of my life, and now I don't hate them because I don't acknowledge them as a family member anymore. A good example is, after my father died, my aunt on my mother's side decided to say something extremely horrible to me and towards my siblings while we were going through the mourning process. And I quote, "You're the reason why your father is dead, and you're the reason why your mother is so upset. It's because of all you beeping kids." I don't care what happens to that woman. I don't care where she is. She's not part of my life. She is a horrible person. I don't care if she ever comes back. She's not part of my life anymore. That's nothing compared to what Fiaura went through, though, I just want to say. So people who are angry enough to cut somebody out of their life should be a point here.
Yeah, I totally buy the fact that Grandpa, he would do that. I mean, it's something that was later explored in the later seasons, where in the beginning, in the first couple of seasons, everyone's all happy and nice for the most part. All the ponies in Ponyville or Canterlot or where, well, not Canterlot, but for the most part, everyone was relatively nice to each other. When we went to the later seasons, we started to learn that some ponies, they can be real jerks, or from very simplistic or very basic. Excuse me. So I completely buy that. There's just, in real life, there's just people who are just jerks like that. They'll just up and leave. Is it wrong? Yeah, but it's realistic. Anyway, I know we kind of had a mood going, but they kind of divert it just because I need a refresher just from my own memory. Going back to Romeo and Juliet. And again, I have a very poor memory because I read it back in middle school, I think. Weren't they just like one-dimensional characters pretty much? Oh, I love Juliet because she's pretty. Was that pretty much the extent? Like they were, because I know star-crossed lovers. It was pretty much right. Yeah. So
yeah, basically the story.
You finish your thought, and then I'll go back after you.
Basically, the storyline behind Romeo and Juliet is Romeo's crushing on a girl doesn't like him, so his friends bring him to a party with their enemy. He happens to come across this one girl, finds out it's Juliet, instantly falls in love. They have like one conversation, if that. Then they get married, boink, and then kill each other.
Yeah, okay, good, because again, I haven't read it since middle school. Anyway, kind of that's my point, where this episode actually did it better than Romeo and Juliet, because we're talking about, in the original story, it was just one-dimensional characters. Pretty much all the characters in that story were one-dimensional characters. At least here, they had an influence in some way. Like Bright Mac, he helped to, they were getting the. God, I'm sneezing like crazy. Bright Mac, he wrecked the their water tower, so he's like he brought out honesty. So we found that they were both nice in the beginning, but hey, he's got honesty. She's got something to admire that they can both fall in love with. Buttercup, she helped Mrs. Cake, with their cooking, and eventually got her cutie mark. They helped out. They, it wasn't anything major like developing civilizations and stuff, but they actually had meaningful conversations and actually influenced everything. Where in Romeo and Juliet is, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. I love you. I love you too. And that's pretty much it. So this is why, adaptation wise, they did very well.
Oh yeah, that part I'm not faulting. The part with the pair was done exceptionally well. They did excel the formula beyond generic cute boy likes cute girl. It was just more the heads of the houses that still felt static and very script-like to me. Like, as I say, that the song, the bit with the helping out in the kitchen, all that was an excel of the formula. It's like, that is great, that is fantastic. And then you get to the heads of the houses that are very word for word. I hate you, I don't know why. I'm just reading the lines as Shakespeare wrote them.
Yeah, and Fiaura, before any of us have to go into therapy, can we please move on to Q&A? Because I think we pretty much tackled everything.
Yeah, it's just I understand if you don't know what it is to have a hatred for someone and not actually be able to grasp the idea that you hate someone so much you're willing to cut out them from your life. But at the same time, I understand why they kept that aspect, and I understand why that aspect works, especially with the previous season having had the Hatfield and McCalls, who, by the time that they get to that episode with Fluttershy and Twilight, the two families don't remember why they hate each other, they just do. And that's what blind hatred is. But yeah, we're gonna... I think we should move on to Q&A unless someone has another subject or theme they want to bring up.
I think we pretty much killed it. Q&A, send us all your questions.
Oh, no. Anybody want to speak up, or should we move?
Well, there's one thing I do want to...
There we go. I knew it. All right, so Bernie Critic and Golden Fox, because that's the order you lit up in.
Well, I know that Lightning Bliss touched on it a little bit, but that song, man. Like we vaguely touched on it, but that song easily ranks up among the best the show has ever done. Like, I still listen to that song and still cry a lot. And it's also just the montage around it. The scenes, the little romantic elements that they include are just beautiful. Like one of my favorites is them dancing when they're across the yard from each other. And it scenes like that, and of course the scene you brought up, I think it was Fiaura, is how did they all like coordinate all of these events, like Burnt Oak, Mrs. Cake, and Mayor. And I have to think that would be an interesting story to explore, is actually have like the perspectives of those three characters every time the apples are around, how, whether or not they want to talk, how they would bring about, or how the apples dealing with them in their day-to-day life, remind them of their parents. That could be some really dramatic storytelling.
That's a good point. Golden?
All right. So I was in the chat, and somebody mentioned that nobody ever said that the parent passed away. And I've stated it's not going to be mentioned because it's a topic that is too heavy to be talked about, to where they had to only give out any subtle hints. And somebody actually pointed out that in Hearts and Hooves Day, there was one small shot where there was a funeral scene going on. And I just want to point out that is a very harmless moment that doesn't impact anything. It's just there. There's a difference between showing just something like that and literally talking about a heavy subject matter in the entirety of an episode.
Can I make 2 points? One for Brony and one for Gold.
Fire away.
Okay, Brony Critic, I agree with you. I mean, not only seeing like the... I don't think you even have to see like the images or everything. It's like with the Applejack song on the Christmas album, Days Gone By. Just the mere, what should we call it? The mere melody and the mere like instruments, they just make you feel like that vibe of like I don't know what I should call it, like love or like feelings, and it really just wants to make you cry. And it's kind of like Remember Me, where like the guitar and everything, like just the instruments themselves kind of make it feel like that nostalgic vibe. Now, as for Golden Fox, what was your point again? I was kind of...
I was stating that when it comes to parental deaths or any general death, it's a very heavy subject matter that can be too heavy for a show that is aimed for a much younger audience, like what Friendship is Magic was originally intended.
Okay.
And I was told this because I was in an argument once during season 3 when I mentioned that talking about Applejack's parents was kind of integral, but I was told this very argument, and I pretty much stuck with it because the more I argued about it, the more it made me look, what is the term, like dismissive and disrespectful about the subject matter. So I stuck with it, and it just seems weird that now some people are arguing with this particular argument that I was given, even though it was given for them. Go ahead, Moon Knight. I'm getting too carried away.
Nah, it's okay. It's okay. I understand your point. Like, it is a really touchy subject. There's really a lot of touchy subjects that are a little bit too delicate to touch in some of the kids shows. But then again, this kind of subject, while it is touchy, I do understand the people that want to just straight up, maybe just don't straight up saying, maybe just a little bit, how should we say it? Like, not just straight up say it like that, but it's something that is going to happen at least one time in your life. I know that it's nothing that kids should like go over with, but it may very well happen tomorrow or the next day after tomorrow.
I'll actually make 2 quick points. So, first quick point is I recommend reading the MLP comic issue number 72, which is kind of a continuation of this episode in a way. I won't talk about it too much, but basically it's a very simple but very heartwarming episode, and the ending is it's pretty much as powerful as this episode's ending. As far as the whole death thing, I'm going to cover a different angle from it, but honestly, I think it's better if they actually stay dead. Because if in season 9, which I know they won't do, because it'd be monumentally stupid. Like if they brought Bright Mac and Pear Butter back, that would feel like such a manipulative, cheap way to like it would just piss me off to no end. Because the Apple family, we've been following them. They're kind of like basically an allegory for like struggling farmers, where they're doing good enough, but it could have been better. If their family came back, it kind of reduces the struggle with the family. So I think it's best if they stay dead.
And because they don't say they could just they were somewhere else. They were in Black Skull Island or in Mount Ares or whatever they could be.
They were getting ice cream and they got lost.
They could do something, but the thing is gone.
I was going to say, although we also know that time travel exists in the My Little Pony universe. So
don't even bring that shit.
You know what? Unless somebody has another point, I do believe Q&A is necessary. So does anybody have a final point?
I will have one final point for Master Code. No, it's alright. It's only going to be quick. Because
that's what they always say.
We know that if you've seen the trailer, Sombra's coming back in season 9.
Spoilers! A lot of people have seen it yet. No, doesn't happen. There's an ice cream monster. Blah blah blah.
Well, it's in 2 trailers.
If it is outside of this episode, just can't do it right now. Especially
it'll relate to this episode. Yeah, it'll relate to this episode. But the main point is, we all know Sombra has that nightmare door thing. And the only way that you could bring them back briefly is if Applejack looks at the door and sees her parents only to have them ripped away again.
Okay, that would be the one exception that if you brought them back, like you immediately just kibosh them.
Golden Fox just
to piss them off. That's the only thing. That's the only scenario. But if you brought them back permanently, you piss off everybody.
Right, so now, for everyone's questions. All right, so first up from Mario Frockport. What are everyone's ideas about what happened to their parents?
I've got an idea. They did go to get ice cream, but then they were eaten by wildebeest.
What was the question again?
What happened?
How did the parents die?
They just died. Like it's the point again. Like I know they're not gonna say it, but I think they should have like at least teased a little bit more, or just like explain too, because it's just a part of life that is gonna happen. It's harsh, but I mean, as I say, it could very well happen tomorrow or something.
I would say probably the most logical would probably be something like maybe it's a raining season and there's like a huge mudslide and the kids get trapped somewhere near it or whatever, and the parents have to sacrifice themselves to save the kids. So something like that, or someone would do it at the river, something like that. One of those two scenarios seems like the most.
So it's like Lion King too.
Do you guys remember that episode in like the fire swamp?
Oh, you mean with the
Oh no! Don't tell. Oh.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah,
the wrong show.
I just think that there's so many creatures that apparently eat ponies that there's bound to be something that happened that was just like, yeah, there's some sort of critter. Like you have dragons.
Plus, the Apple family. Well, and the Apple family lives right next to the Everfree Forest. Their whole story was about how Granny Smith was chased by timber wolves.
Yeah,
so
you have timber wolves, and you have dragons, and you have manticores, chimeras, bugbears. There's a long list of just murder-happy creatures.
And wildebeests.
And apples are delicious, so...
Oh.
You like Big Mac apples?
So, for Master Code, would you think that that one of the siblings, Big Mac, Applejack, or Apple Bloom, would get married in front of the apple pear tree?
Oh, that would be like the perfect capper for whoever they wed with. It's like you're continuing the family legacy literally right in front of the family legacy. So that's like icing on top of the.
They would be a perfect pair.
Oh.
Boo! I have to do it, sorry.
Alright, from Little Ragnarok. So do we think the smudge at the bottom of the piece of paper in the Pinky Apple Pie episode in season 4 was done intentionally by the keeper of the books in order to hide from the siblings about Buttercup and Bright Mac's courtship? And it just accidentally got over the relationship to the pies.
Well, I don't think so, simply because of how they're related. They're apparently like third cousins 4 times removed or something like that, and that's a little too distant. But whereas this would just be literally a one generational secret, but it is an interesting idea nonetheless.
I'm gonna go with the more logical approach with how dirty that house was that the book is being kept in. The smudge just came on that naturally with how cluttered it is. That's just me, though.
You
I
can't
was
stop the
just-
smudge.
Can I talk?
Yes.
Like everybody's talking, I can't talk. Got him, a diva. Anyway, I kind of
Just
just
like
assumed.
Shatner.
Darren, no! Don't compare me to Shatner. I mean, I can only imagine that they were working on the fields and an apple tree.
I agree with Atlantic Blues.
Maybe an apple tree. I mean, not to laugh, but yeah, maybe there was a horrible accident. Like maybe they were trying to get rid of an old tree together and it fell on them. Or I was thinking, I mean, as silly as this sounds, but hey, it's not impossible. Like, how about an uncommon wagon accident while they were traveling together, pulling wagons, and one of them fell off a very high peak.
Well, and there is one element that we don't really think about. I noticed that in all of these deaths, we're making them die together. Apple Bloom has never met her mother. So...
Uh,
do you think it
Next
might be possible she just died in childbirth?
Ooh.
Another touchy topic.
Ooh. Okay, this brings up a next question, unless somebody's got another comment on this one. Alright, Moon Knight. Move it up.
I think the thing about that the Pinky being related to the apples, I mean, who knows? Maybe she was trying to hide it, but then again, she didn't really know where half of the stories are because she's got it all mixed around here and her house is just a mess. I don't think it was really her intention.
Alright, King Bronze would like to know if any of us wish to comment on the pain of not knowing where your ancestry extends and how it extends for several generations after the initial adoption.
I can actually speak a little bit on this, as I am actually a hobbyist genealogist. And the unfortunate thing for a lot of people is that history isn't kept as well as it should. My family comes from Ireland and Germany, and neither one of those places are exactly renowned for keeping their for being able to keep their records very well. One, because, you know, they were run by people who actively didn't care about the population that lived there, and the other because they got into a war every 20 years. So their records had a tendency to burn. but it does make it rather frustrating for people to like not know where they come from. And it's one of those elements where you feel like there's a part of you that's missing. And I know that I have some relatives who were adopted, or some relatives who their ancestors were adopted, and so there's at some point there's a limit to how far you can go and how much your adopted family counts towards your real one, which is an element I really like that they treated in this episode. Is Pear Butter lost her family, but Granny Smith was a champ and just immediately accepted her, no questions asked, which showed a lot of her character, and I think it actually made her look pretty good relatively. But it's kind of that mentality.
Anyone else? Was that yes, Shoujo, or no?
I was just going to say that I'm not on the same level as Brony Critic here, but I know that I'm part German and part Irish, and there's this part of me that just wishes to know about where most of my family came from, and just like how we got to how my darn it, what's the word I'm looking for? How my group of people that are related to me came to where they were and settled down and where I live now. So, in some extent to Bernie Critic, but not in the same aspect as them, because I'm not a hobbyist genealogist.
Okay. All right, so next question. Do we think that with the glimpse into the Apple parents, we will be introduced to Scootaloo's family before the end of the show?
Well, I actually heard a rumor that Scootaloo's parents were both women, and that she was actually adopted.
No.
Those are her aunts, and those are her aunts.
We've got so many rumors around this one.
No, that's her aunts. That's her aunts.
Rumor has it.
And here's the thing: a couple of years ago, I would have said no. But we've had Steven Universe in the Loud House since then, so it is entirely possible that we could see Aunt Melody and whatever her other aunt's name is in the show. I don't think we'll ever see her parents, but I think her aunts would definitely present some rather interesting story fodder.
Look, we've seen like same-sex couples in the Equestria Girls movies. If they don't just straight up say it with Scootaloo songs, I'm just leaving the boat.
Well, we're down to the last season, so they gotta give it one hell of a show!
Alright, so in the meantime, Jasper, directly to you. Do you, Morris 19 Scott would like to ask Jasper, do you have any advice for being an actor on YouTube?
Go to acting school! Learn to emote!
I'm kind of with you. So, go to acting school, join a local theater.
I was not finished. Don't be afraid to emote. Don't be afraid to play with your voice. And more importantly, don't sign up for a podcast if all you're gonna do is scream into the microphone!
I love
You do more than just scream into the microphone, though, Jasper.
You also, William Shatner.
But you also scream so well, and that's the real treasure.
Friendship.
So, does anyone have any parents they want to see other than Scootaloo now that we've seen the Apple parents?
Spike.
Okay, down voice.
Fine.
You know what? I want to see Pinky's parents episode.
We did that already.
Yeah, we're on about parents we haven't seen.
Actually, you know what? No, I agree with Jasper. I think Pinky's adopted because she doesn't share a color palette with any of her family.
She was great.
Okay,
I want to know what happened to Celestia and Luna's parents!
Aliens.
Dun dun dun!
Bum, bum, bum.
They're secret agents.
I was talking more about addressing the whole Pinky leaving the farm thing, but sure, whatever.
I mean, I'll answer that one. That potentially gets into the idea that they're princesses for a reason, because there is a queen, which is obviously in the fandom Queen Fausticorn, and Faust is not with Hasbro anymore, so Celestia and Luna's parents could be pretty much off the cards if it was originally going to be Queen Fausticorn.
Okay. Lightning Bliss. This is from Mario Frockport. I liked your Godzilla review. Are you going to do Gamera too?
I actually really don't like Gamera.
That's fair.
It's a space turtle with rockets. I have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's what I grew up with. Salute!
This one's from Little Ragnarok. Since there are Zap apples, are there Zap pears?
Oh!
That was disappointing, and you should feel disappointed.
Now, for the one to tug at everyone. Magical Starflash has one question this week. What's our favorite love story? In media or real life?
Not Romeo and Juliet.
Oh.
So, who
I'm
wants to
thinking.
start this humdinger.
Jasper,
Okay,
you
go on.
like talking?
Yes, but Moon Knight is so good at existing. He should go first.
I know! The best love story of all, Twilight!
I will end your
I have one.
existence!
Okay,
I have one.
First off, Birdhelm. Second, go ahead, Bernie Critic.
This is from a book series, one of my favorite book series, and I guarantee almost no one's ever heard of it. It's from, is anyone familiar with the 1632 series by Eric Flint? That's what I figured. So there's a couple in that book series named Gretchen Richter and Jeff Higgins. And they are amazing. They are wonderful. And their entire relationship, even if it kind of starts out of nowhere and it sort of has a love at first sight feel to it, the whole impetus behind the series makes their actual relationship and how it develops through the course of the series have a lot of natural, like, it feels natural. It develops naturally. Like they're attracted to one another, but they don't fall in love because of some very particular situational differences between the two. But it even allows the two of them to kind of heal and become better people as a result of the events in that story. And I don't want to say too much, one, because it's kind of dark, but it's also because I would love to see more people read this book series. No one ever reads this book series, and I want to geek out about this book series.
So, mine is a toss-up between Beauty and the Beast and Princess Bride.
Hey, those are not bad. I got one. There's different ways to tell a love story. It doesn't have to be a man and a woman loving each other. It could be like a parent loving their child too. But that being said, I'm gonna go with the cliche romantic. It would be My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I love that story because you have a girl who comes from a very, very big, loud Greek family, and they're all about marrying other Greeks. You're not allowed to marry anybody else, or you're frowned upon and stuff. And she falls in love with another guy who, his family isn't very religious. He is not Greek at all. He's a vegetarian. He's a professor. But what I love about the story and how this man goes through heaven and hell to marry this woman. He agrees to be baptized as Greek. He agrees to have a big Greek wedding with her. She puts up with the criticisms of her father bad-mouthing her fiance. She puts up with her insane family doing these insane traditions, even though she asked, hey, I just wanted a small meeting with a big family event. And she's like, well, they might as well meet the whole family. And I'm like, But at the end of it all, after they get married and after the fiasco of a wedding, they're at the reception and the father makes an announcement and he approaches the bride and groom and all he does is says, here, and he hands him a letter. The husband opens up the letter and he basically says, oh my God, they bought us a house. And it's in that moment there. Not only was their marriage a complete success, but reconnecting with her family and he connecting with her family. And it was love all around. I love that.
Okay, I think I may have found one or three. Aladdin and Jasmine from Aladdin, Tiana and Naveen from Princess and the Frog, and Jesse and Becky from Full House.
Those are three very different ones.
And of course, we can't forget the powerhouse classic, Little Pimp and
Can I go now?
Sure.
I know Jasper say like a joke. Okay, it's gonna be like a triple tie two. Okay, first of all, it's Blue and Jewel from Rio. I know the movie's kind of cliche because they don't like a lot like at the beginning, but well, she saved her, and they really have some really good loving moments. The second would be it's from the Guardians of Ga'Hoole books, which is Soren and I think it's Pelamore. I don't know how it's pronounced. But basically, they know each other because she saves her from her hollow being burned or something. She really cares about her a lot, and then they have like these three little cute owlets. And the last one, I forgot what the last one was. Let's just leave it into I don't remember the third one.
All right.
I'll do. I was going to say I'll do my two serious two, which is The Illusion of Time, which I'll say no more about, because it you know, like when there's these things where it's like, just take my word and go play it, because if you kind of spoil anything, much like Mother 3, the entire thing's ruined. There's The Illusion of Time, and another good love story, which you should know, Fiaura, is Doctor Who with the 10th Doctor and Rose, where they get separated through that wall. As I've seen a picture of Sunrise touching a wall with somebody on the other side, which is a recreation of that Doctor Who scene.
Difference here is the wall she's touching is that's her dead father on the other side of the wall of life and death.
Oh, I remember which one. Astrid and Hiccup. That one's the one that I was.
Alright. Well, anybody else got one they want to weigh in on, or shall we move to artwork and outros? Alright. I'm not prepared, but go ahead, Spyro.
Reveal to us.
I will reveal. So it's slightly not finished because last week was Lunar Eclipse, and she has this little, you know, when she tosses the spider at the spider web thing, nobody ever vectored that, and nobody ever got a good image of it, so I had to go onto YouTube, print screen, and crop it all. But I don't remember if it was Brony or Shoujo, but you said you hadn't been in a picture yet.
That was me.
Uh-oh.
I had mentioned it too.
Well, don't worry. I fulfilled your request.
Okay. Let's see it. Come on. You're killing us
Give me
all.
a second, I'm just dragging it.
Do it, Billy.
Hold on. The link is broken. Why? Give me 2 seconds.
Upload it directly to it.
Talk about something.
No, just
Oh, thank gosh, I still have
drag and drop.
30 seconds to survive.
It's too powerful to drag and drop. Give me 2 seconds.
He makes these wonderful pictures and then forgets that, you know, he has to compress them down to something that Discord can understand.
You gotta put him on
Because
Gazio.
Discord has tiny mind, you see.
Well, you see, I put it on Stash, but I'm having to redo it on Stash because it's saying that the link
Imager.
is broke.
Imager.
Right, I'll do that next time then. But it's already at 86%, 90%, so it'll be ready in like 30 seconds.
Quick, everyone, stall for time while he's still uploading. Someone dance.
Hello, my honey. Hello, my darling. Hello, my ragtime gal.
Oh, my ragtime gal.
Baby, my heart's on fire.
There you go.
There you go.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Goodbye.
I temper my sense of
I am
decency
Your
and
Honor.
anticipation.
Why am I the Pink Ranger?
Because I tried blue and it just looked like your natural coat.
It would
colour,
blend
so
too
I
much,
made
that's
it
why.
pink.
I. Oh,
Where is this? Where is it?
it's in artwork. There's a link.
In
It's on the
artwork?
screen.
It's also shared on the screen.
I feel like this is not what Brody Critic wanted.
So many problems. Several questions, yeah.
But hey,
What,
it's the first
what are
picture
said
you...
questions?
You know what? It's the first picture you've done that you forgot the
I
barbecue
w-
sauce.
I
There
like.
is, well, I'll tell you, on the finished version that I'll get finished tonight, there's going to be a little pile of candy in the center bottom, and there was going to be a pot sitting on top. But I do have a little extra special bit for you as well, a little sneak peek. As I was on a mad sketching day that day, and the next person has been chosen for the glass.
You have chosen wisely.
I just feel like we come here every week now for trauma. Like, that's just what we do. So while Spyro uploads this sneak peek, you guys can... Okay, Jasper.
There's two.
Jasper.
Ooh.
So yeah, that
Is that
The first-
is that a Jasper and a Golden?
no, the first one is Jasper that is going to be holding pizzas in a halo above his head, and there's going to be like a pot of barbecue sauce as the keystone in the middle.
Oh, I see it.
And the bottom one is Aeon, who is going to be holding 2 runes, and he's going to be floating above like an arcane circle.
So I finally got a chance to see the picture.
Yes.
Wait, wait. Aeon's just holding 2 runes? That's not loot enough.
So
Well-
so Brony Critic, now that you've been featured in a picture, would you care to start giving us the outro and then tell us if you regret poor life decisions or not?
I love the costume, for one. That's nice. But I am the Brony Critic. I am confused, but mostly I engage in fan reviews and examination of fan content, promoting the community as a whole. You guys can check me out on YouTube by just searching for the Brony Critic. You can also follow me on Twitter. I am currently in the editing process for one of my scripts for my next script, and I already know what my next project is going to be. I am also working on some convention material for BronyCon and TruckCon. Also doing a little bit of pre-writing, I guess, for a fan fiction concept.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Well, okay then. I've been Chojo, and I've been mentally scarred by that, and I'm gonna try and probably stay awake for the entire night so spiders don't climb on me while I try to sleep. But anyway, guys, that's it. That's it for now. You guys can check me on the YouTubes at Chojo, on Twitter at Chojo Games, because I think someone already had Chojo on Twitter for that. And I'm in the busy process of scripting one of my next collab reviews with a friend from the Rift City. And I think possibly tomorrow, my interview with one of my other friends is supposed to be going up on one of their channels, so keep an eye out for that. And I think I may actually also be planning in the works a first impressions of Power Rangers Beast Morphers, because I got finished watching the second episode today because it just aired on TV, and I was impressed by it, so I got some things I want to say about that. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for listening, and Moon Knight, on to you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this this podcast. It went really into a lot of places. Moon Knight, I usually do reviews and covers. I'll try to do some covers around here and there. but yeah, now you know. You don't wish for something because you'll regret it. But yeah,
At least I'm
Master
wearing Power Rangers attire.
All right, Master Code.
Alrighty, everyone. This has been your super mega ultra super sexy ace analyst Master Code, and you can find me on YouTube and Twitter. As you all know, I review everything from ponies, from the comics to the books to the series, and my latest review will probably go up tomorrow. Is I'm actually reviewing the comic I mentioned earlier, the one where there was a continuation of Pear Butter and the Bright Max story. So that'll be up, like I said, hopefully tomorrow. Then, as per usual, editing Analysis Anarchy. And then, if you didn't see Golden's recent review of Rarity Investigates, I was a major part in that. In fact, I was basically the star in that review. It was a critical role in that review. Like, that review could not exist without me. So, anyway, that's all for me. On to the Blissy Bliss.
All right, Blissy.
Hey, blah, 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 blah.
Hey, that's Jasper's part.
Oh, okay. Oh, alright, I won't steal Uncle Jasper's role. I'm a Lightning Bliss. I am the Rainbow Alicorn. I'm being stalked by Solar Flare right now. He should be in the stream, but he was too busy cooking for me. He's so nice. And he's scratching my head. Ow.
Just so you know, we made shrimp scampi and it was delicious.
We miss you, Solar.
They miss you. Stay tuned for my channel when, hopefully, after I get back from my break after next week, I will be announcing some con announcements alongside some friends of mine. You might know them from here. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hug, hug.
I have no idea what she's talking about.
Aye, wike, nudge, nudge.
Wink, wink.
All right, Jasper.
First, I just want to say, Solar Flare, why you never come home no more, Daddy? Second of all, I would like to thank y'all for coming out today. I have been the Pizza Pun. You can check me out on the DeviantArt and the Twitters, and what I've got coming up is still more commissions, which, by the way, are still open.
Insane.
You know, Jasper, you're saying, Solar, why don't you come home no more, Daddy? We've had crybabies mentioned. Are you really all sure this is the road that you want to go down? Is this really the path that you want to choose? I won't say anymore. But, yes, I am Insane Spyro, the greatest dragon in all of gaming. I do reviews, let's plays, and other gaming news. I've got the review of Anthem now finally done, that's going up tomorrow, as well as the one that's in the editing room, which is going to be called Far Cry Exodus 76, because they're all the same. And I'll pass it on to Golden.
I'm going to try to keep as calm as possible. I want to get something off my chest. This is the first time I've ever stormed out in the middle of a podcast, which is unprofessional of me. It makes everybody else feel something negative. I can't even think of a negative term at the top of my head right now. But so I want to address a point here that when it comes to, it's fine to have arguments and discussions, but there is something that when you're talking about what point you're addressing or what kind of factual information you're sharing, just do yourself a favor and, okay, let me put it this way. Ever since I reviewed Apple Family Reunion, after my claim saying that we really ought to have an episode about Applejack's parents, of course it wouldn't be for years until that would happen, and that never bothered me. But a lot of people have been telling me that by TV network standards, they're not allowed to do it. And it was mentioned again during Season 5. But then recently, after having this argument in this chat, that this whole time it was allowed, what was the point of this entire information that I was fed on? This frustrates me as a reviewer and a critic, because part of being a reviewer is gathering information. And if there's wrong information of some kind, then that affects almost the entirety of what point you're trying to get across. So, the point is, whatever information you're trying to give me, be sure you're absolutely sure of it, because otherwise it's going to make me look like a moron.
I mean, it's okay. I understand being impassioned about something. I know Spyro had me up in arms about 30 minutes ago, so...
I will say that, Insane Spyro can have his opinion on the episode. He has the right to like or dislike and have whatever points there are. But factual information, make sure you know what information you're researching in order to prove your argument correctly. Because there's only so much information that I can find when I'm trying to review multiple things.
And, when you were legitimately wrong, it's okay to admit you're wrong. We're reviewers, and part of that is, being willing to say, you know what, I got this wrong.
And I will say this: you'll never be seen as a moron as long as Master Code is here.
Oof.
Exactly, because that guy's.
You're insulting my marketing manager.
So in the meantime,
Yeah, you're not marketing
I
manager.
have to give my outro. Hi everyone, I've been Fiaura, your host. We do have a raid, which is basically where I'm going to take everyone who's still left in our audience, and I'm going to throw them at another pony podcast, though I give everyone fair warning who's in our audience. This pony podcast is not PG rated, I should say.
Oh my.
My upcoming
That's it,
project
convince
is, thanks to the Traveling Pony Museum, I've just posted the link in chat, my Fallout Equestria story is being published. I'm contracted to get it done. The entire story has to be done by 2021. There's a date in 2021 where the whole story has to be finished in order for them to publish all of it. But the first volume, this is the last day to pre-order because it goes to the presses tomorrow. Like, literally get started putting on the printing press tomorrow morning. Whether I want to do it or not at this point, I just kind of have to drop in and say, okay, well, that's the final version, and I don't get to make any more changes. So that's my thing that's happening right now. Now, in the meantime, anybody have anything else to say before I throw our audience at the other podcast?
Sheepskin
Episode
seat
make me-
covers.
This episode make
How'd you know what I was going to say, Master Code?
Go on, Brun.
Go ahead, critic.
I wish we have more episodes like this one in the future. Season 9 looks like it's going to be really, really dramatic based upon the marketing, and I hope that they can make it much more like this episode and less like the episode that, less than the Season 8 equivalent of the same storyline.
Well, if they're going to go through the Infinity War phase, I don't think there's going to be much time for that.
All right, so good night, everybody.
I love you.
Should have
Long
aimed
and
for the
go
head.
ahead.
Till next week.
Bye.
Bison, you're off the air.
And now I
Get
give
to the chopper.
You
Hello.
are off the air.
That was
That-
cheated.
Yeah, that got intense.